Welcome to Bible Believers Fellowship in the ministry of BBFOHIO.com as we begin our study of the book of Hosea, the first book in the Minor Prophets. We will cover all 11 verses of Hosea chapter 1 in this study. If you have any questions, comments, or prayer requests, send those by email to bbfohio@protonmail.com. Or mail your letter along with any check or money order contributions to support this ministry to Bible Believers Fellowship, P.O. Box 662, Worthington, Ohio 43085. Donations can also be made at bbfohio.com using the PayPal donation button. We now begin our study in the book of Hosea, chapter 1, verses 1 through 11. This is part 1 of 2.
Earth Day is what we're talking about. It's not about the Creator or His will for creation. That's the big problem with it. We got a speech from the Pope scolding everybody for polluting and despoiling the planet. And I mentioned the loudest environmentalists are actually doing more to destroy the planet than anyone. And that's why at the end of the tribulation period, and it says, "And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged. And who's he coming after? And shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth." And you just think about that the Christians are gone. And they accuse Christians and conservatives and farmers and people like that, when the reality is these people they project. That's the thing you find with these people. They project what they accuse you of doing, they are doing. You'll see that over and over. So Earth Day, which is just a front for environmentalism, it's about atheistic socialism and it's about control. This is an example of an environmentalist and the kind of stories they put out there all the time. The headline is, "Capitalism is destroying the earth. We need a new human right for future generations." Folks, it's in places like China that is communist that they do more damage to the environment than anywhere else. And you just keep your eye on that. They all fall into this category of Romans 1:25, who changed the truth of God into a lie and worshiped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. These Earth Day gatherings do not glorify God. They totally forget the Creator and in a lot of ways mock the Creator. And they're worshiping the creation. That's what it, when it says worshiped and served the creature, but it's just they worship creation itself, including the animals. It's like they worship that instead of God. Yeah. And how about this? The Earth Day co-founder. I've mentioned this before, but a lot of people forget that the Earth Day co-founder named Ira Einhorn killed and composted his girlfriend. And go read Romans 1:18-32 to figure out why. That's him down the corner attending the first Earth Day event at Fairmount Park in Philadelphia, April 22nd, 1970. Yeah, it was like, let me see, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. I think it's seven months old. And there he is being escorted by the police, having killed his girlfriend. Her name was Helen Maddox. She broke up with Einhorn after 5 years of being together. He threatened to throw her belongings into the street if she didn't come and get them. So she went to Einhorn's apartment to retrieve them on September 9th, 1977. I was just getting ready to turn 8 years old, but was never seen again. And after she went missing, Einhorn told police that she had gone out to a co-op to buy tofu and sprouts and never came back. 18 months later, searched his apartment after neighbors complained that a reddish-brown foul-smelling liquid was leaking from the ceiling directly below Einhorn's bedroom closet. In the closet, police found Maddox's beaten and partially mummified body stuffed into a trunk that had also been packed with styrofoam, air fresheners, and newspapers. That's one of the co-founders, and people say, you can't paint everybody like just because of him. No, I'm telling you, it's all throughout that environmentalist movement. And Romans 1, 18 to 32 explains why. 1 John 5:19 also tells us, and we know, some Christians don't seem to know this, I have to debate with them, but it says, when we know that we are of God, and the whole world lieth in wickedness. We've got to get rid of this idea that God is wrong, and that the world's, generally speaking, a good place. People are killed every year because they think that way. Now, I don't run around and look at everybody and think everybody's a killer or anything crazy like that, but there's just no reason to put yourself in a situation where you have to trust people like that. And that's why we teach what's called defensive driving. Why? Not everybody out there drives like a devil, but too many do. So you better drive defensively. And that means to watch for people crossing the yellow line, going left to center, or when you go through a red light, don't take for granted it's clear. Look, see if anybody's coming. That sort of thing. Even when you're in the grocery store, Jenny was telling me you should have assured clear distance today. So with that, we get into our expository study of Hosea. We're going to start in chapter 1, verse 1, right after we open with the word of prayer. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to share the Word of God online. And this will go out on the internet and possibly on radio. And we just pray you help us to keep the recording equipment functioning without the help that we normally have. More than anything, it's so that we can get the Word of God out to those who hunger for your Word. We want to be faithful to preach the Word, instant, in season, out of season. And that's why we're here. We just pray it's pleasing to you, and that with your help we can get the job accomplished. It's such a joy to study your book, and we thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen. So we're going to be in Hosea 1, verse 1 is where we start, and it's the first book in what's called the Minor Prophets. We've studied Daniel just in the 14, almost 15 years we've been here at BBF. We've gone through Daniel twice, and there's a reason why I went ahead and went through it a second time. Won't get into that, but right after Daniel, you have the Minor Prophets, beginning with Hosea. And they're not minor in importance. And Hosea is actually longer than Daniel in size. But generally speaking, they are shorter books. So that's evidently the reason they're called minor prophets. In the Jewish Bible, they never called them that. And I've thought about it. What else would you call them if you wanted to group them together? And so as long as you understand that they're minor prophets, mainly because of the size. As they say, the exception proves the rule, and Hosea is the one exception. And they involve major information in minor form for the most part. You'll see that as you go through these. Now, as some of you have read through your Bibles, if you're like me, I remember first few times I went through the Minor Prophets, I just read it, but I didn't get much of it. But it's great because later that familiarity with it helped me when I really studied these books. Peter Ruckman has a commentary on the Minor Prophets, and he says this: the so-called Minor Prophets constitute some of the most neglected books of the Bible in the modern church age, and there are no critical or exegetical commentaries on these prophets that are faithful to the authorized text, end quote. And there's the 2 points. The problem is the reason why they're neglected by most churches, because most churches don't really teach the books of the Bible. They don't go through books of the Bible. So there's very few churches that even go through the books of the Bible. And then some men because of point number 2 made by Dr. Ruckman there are no critical or exegetical commentaries that are faithful to the authorized text on the book of Hosea. And so men have felt ill-equipped, I think, to get into them. And sometimes it's just because they're not as exciting, and a lot of preachers don't like to get into it because they don't talk a lot about tithing and church attendance. But as we said, Hosea is the first of these minor prophets. And then comes Joel. And unless something changes, we'll just keep going through these books. After Joel is Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, and then Micah. And then comes Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. Can you go back there and make sure No, I see the red light. I'm sorry, I'm being a little paranoid now. Don't have my buddy Johnny back there to keep an eye on my camera. But I see the red light on, so we're good. This is something that I wanted to share also from J. Vernon McGee. He says they dealt with the fact, talking about the minor prophets, that God's people had broken the law of God, the Ten Commandments. This necessarily puts an emphasis on works, good works. For this reason, the liberals and the promoters of the social gospel have used the minor prophets a great deal. Unfortunately, they have missed the main message of these prophets, end quote. And J. Vernon McGee was, I think he kind of came up on the whole fundamentalist modernist controversy. If you know anything about Christian history, you ought to know about that. And what happened was, about the time, sometime in the 18th century, in German seminaries, they started teaching stuff called higher criticism, and they were ripping apart the Hebrew and Greek texts, and then that meant they would turn around and attack the German Luther Bible and the King James Bible. And then along came Westcott and Hort, and they put some of that into effect when they came out with the Revised Version in 1881. And every Bible since 1881 that has come out, every major translation, I'll put it that way, has come from a corrupted text. That text is based on Codex Vaticanus. If you want your Bible to come from the Pope in his library, the Codex Vatican, then just use one of these new versions. And what happened was it not only affected the Bible, obviously, that they're using, but it also bled into their doctrine. And they stopped believing the Bible. They started thinking the Bible was full of errors because there's 30-some thousand changes between the King James and the Revised New Testaments. And so people lose their faith in the Bible. And they start to think that the Bible is just a corrupted book, and then that leads to not believing that you really have to go by anything in the Bible, and that's called liberalism. Liberals then adopted the theory of relativity, just like they did in secular sciences. They brought it into morality, and they started teaching the situation ethics and all that sort of thing. And so then they emphasized, instead of the gospel, they, out of pride, started emphasizing man, keeping the golden rule, doing good. Why? Well, Paul explains that in Ephesians 2:8 and 9. For by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. So anytime you get involved in any of these cults, like Mormonism and the Masonic Lodge or whatever, but also when you get involved with any liberal church, it's all about works. It's all about boasting, pride, having your name on plaques and things so people can see it. And so what J. Vernon McGee is pointing out, that liberals went into these books that are under the Mosaic Law that are pointing out the wickedness of the Israelites, but pointing them towards doing good and doing what's right. And they capitalize on particular passages to promote their liberal theology. But if you do what we're doing, number one, we start with belief in the book. And as we go verse by verse, we learn the whole message of the book then you can't come out a liberal. And you won't agree with the liberals when they teach. Hosea was sent to prophesy to the northern kingdom of Israel nearly 200 years after Solomon. Spelling is bad tonight, but this is a basic chart. Those of you who know your Old Testament history should know Saul was appointed king, replaced by David. David then died, and Solomon, his son, became king. That takes you from about 1050 BC down to about 930 BC, or 931, thereabout. Then Rehoboam became king in the southern kingdom. And Jeroboam became king when the kingdom split. Jeroboam became king in the north. Now in the north it was the majority of tribes. In the south you had Judah, and the Levites were there because they stayed with the temple and everything. Then you had Benjamin as part of that tribe, or that southern kingdom as well. But all the other tribes, and really Benjamin, they count with the north, even though some of Benjamin stayed down there. And so that's where you get the term 10 lost tribes. Because that if you follow this chart where it says north on the right-hand side facing the chart, Jeroboam was the first king, but then there was a second Jeroboam, and he was a wicked, wicked king. And the wickedness of the north ended up with the Assyrian captivity in 721 BC. And that's what Hosea is dealing with. He's dealing with the reign of Jeroboam leading up to the destruction in the Assyrian captivity in 721, and he's warning them. God's going to use Hosea to be one of the mouthpieces to warn the kingdom of the north. Now, another 140 years later, or let me see if I'm doing my math right. Yeah, it's about 140 years later, the south will be overrun by Nebuchadnezzar and taken captive, and that's Daniel. The book of Daniel takes place during that time, and all that happens. And so those are the kings we'll see listed there in just a minute. Here in Hosea 1:1, and I'll go back to that chart just so we can see what we're reading. But read Hosea 1, verse 1 with me. The word of the Lord that came unto Hosea, the son of Beeri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. So when you look at the list there in verse 1, God gives us the list of the kings in the south so that we can have an idea of when this took place. But the final reference is in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. And that's who Hosea is speaking to. Israel is the northern kingdom that will go in captivity first. Now, Dr. Floyd Nolan Jones has given us an amazing bird's eye view in his book. It's titled The Chronology of the Old Testament. Now, some of you might want to get this. I'm going to ask Jenny to come and take this from me and hold it down there so you can see it a little better, like she was holding her grandson's picture earlier. And Floyd Nolan Jones is a Bible believer who wrote this chronology of the Old Testament, and it comes with a CD, and I'll show you one of the things that's on that CD. It's empty. I took the CD out, but there's a CD on it that you pop in your computer, and it's well worth the money if you've got the money to buy books. If you have a library, that book should be in your library. And we are going to get another copy for the church library and at some point soon. But this is what the charts look like. They're very basic. And I know you can't see it. That's why I'm going to show you this in a minute. But on the CD, though, you can put that on your computer, and then you can zoom in and everything. Well, I took a few minutes to make this. This is based on Floyd Nolan Jones' work. I don't want to take credit for anything except for the mistakes. And on this chart, hopefully you can see that better, you see the top list of kings, Jeroboam 2, Zechariah, and then sideways is Shallum, because he was only there for a year. Then Menahem, and then there was a Pekahiah who was only there for a couple of years, and then another Pekahiah that was there longer. And so that's why they look the way they do there. And in the middle, the gray with the yellow numbers, that gives you the years. And these are the dates that Floyd Nolan Jones comes up with in his work. And I've read it, and I'm pretty well convinced. And I believe others like Dr. Ruckman and others that I know recommend his work are pretty convinced as well of his dates. But I just want to warn you that if you look at these dates on this chart and you go out there and do your own internet research, you'll see that there are several different claims made for the dates.
So will you at some point upload these charts to the website? So
Yeah. Well, I'll try to actually, when we edit, I'll put it in the video too. But you'll remind me to do that, and I'll try to remember to put these charts online at the website. But in red, you see the ministry of Hosea. So you can see that he came toward the end of Jeroboam II's reign, and it was during Uzziah's reign in the south. And that gives you an idea of when all of this took place. Now, there's one of the things you're going to learn, just like if you read history. I can't remember why we talked about this Sunday, but we have Johns and Jennies in duplicates. And growing up, there was always more than one Greg, and that's why Fudge, the nickname, stuck. Because
we're talking about the apostles and how...
Yeah, there's more than one apostle named Judas. And so throughout the Bible, you have to learn that. And while it may seem a little confusing, I know that most people are able to learn the names of relatives when they're the same, the names of people and characters in television shows and movies and video games. So it shouldn't be too much to ask to put a little effort into learning these names in the Bible. And remember, when you're reading, your King James Bible doesn't call him Jeroboam II. So maybe when you're reading it, out in the margin, just make a little line and put the number 2 and remind you that it's the second one. And he was a really bad guy, evil, wicked king. And he was in the north. So remember that as we continue on. He's considered one of the worst kings of Israel. There's some bad ones. Ahab was really bad with Jezebel. One of the bad ones was Manasseh, but then he repented and made things right toward the end of his life. Then you got guys like Asa, who did really great until the end. And then he just turned cold toward the Lord. And then Josiah was great right up to the very end. We mentioned that Sunday, that he didn't consult the Lord and went out to fight the Pharaoh in Egypt and got killed. So with that, we continue. Verse 2, read that with me. The beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea. And the Lord said to Hosea, Go, take unto thee a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms, for the land hath committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord. Now, it's kind of obvious that there's a real problem here. He uses the word whoredoms 3 times in one verse. And God is telling Hosea to take a wife who, as a whore, symbolizes apostate Israel. Now, that's quite a statement to be making. But that is also what the last days end times church is a figure or symbolized by, the whore of Babylon. And spiritual whoredom is a horrible thing, and God just uses things that take place in life, in the world, to paint pictures, word pictures. And if any of you have ever had somebody you love commit adultery on you, or maybe you just have known someone who went through that, then you understand how ugly that sin is. And it infects a society, and it infects, it actually, the spouse can be infected by disease as a result of it. It splits homes. It produces children that society calls unwanted, so they kill them. Then a lot of them, even if they're born, they're not raised by two parents, and many times the one parent that does raise them is still a whore, and so it produces some pretty bad effects on society at large as a result. And so that's why God uses this whoredom, and is going to use Hosea's wife, who is a whore, to paint the picture of Israel spiritually. Now, this commandment is not for anyone else but Hosea. Amen. This is where being a dispensationalist is very important. It's like we said, everyone's a dispensationalist if they're honest. No one's out there except for Ken Ham. No one else is building an ark. And it's because we're not told to do that. Noah was. Amen? Well, in the same way, I say this because I actually know somebody who was trying to marry a girl that was a well-known, I'm trying to use a word that's not ugly for that, but a whore. I mean, it's promiscuous. She was promiscuous. That's the word they use these days. And when approached, he said, well, if God wanted Hosea to do that, see, he thought that Hosea was missionary dating. And that's not what this is about. Hosea is not told to marry this whore so that he can missionary date. Like most people. That's why this study is so important, because most people don't study and they don't really see what, and also this is an example as to why it's not good practice to just open your Bible and point to a verse. Amen. God, show me your will. Take thee a wife of whoredoms. Do not try that at home. There's some men that I respect who say they did that at some point in their life. And there's, well, you can say that. You can say it's wrong to do that all you want, but that's what I did and God used it. You know, well, in spite of that, not because of that. And that's just nowhere in the Bible are we told to do that. That's the equivalent of casting lots. You might as well just play the slots out on Hilltop when they open the casino back up, because it's about as biblical as that. So, however, we are in such times today as Hosea is. Look at 2 Timothy chapter 4. 2 Timothy chapter 4, right at the very beginning there, verse 1, says, I charge thee therefore before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearing and his kingdom. That's what we're living for. If you live with that in mind every day, all day, thinking about Jesus coming back, it will improve your life. Preach a sermon. The key to successful Christian living is right there. Verse 2 says, preach the word. Be instant in season, out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. And I'll say this, we're going to keep preaching the word, even though most Christians, if you look on YouTube, the people who get the most likes and have the biggest crowds aren't the expository Bible teachers, because most Christians are spiritual infants and they desire milk all the time.